Hello, friends. This is Dave Hurwitz, executive editor at ClassicsToday.com, and we're back in the overflow room to bring you another in the ideal series of videos. That is, I'm going to tell you what the ideal cycle of symphonies or some other kinds of works by a major composer is, by picking and choosing from the best of all of the complete cycles and individual recordings that are out there. And today, by popular demand, we're doing Shostakovich, all 15 symphonies. And I've done this in a way that I hope will give you some latitude to really have a good time with this, because here's the deal. Here I am in the overflow room. That means overflow. So all of my seriously hot first picks are back in Brooklyn. That doesn't mean that they're the best. Of course, it just means they're my personal favorites, or often my personal favorites. But there are so many wonderful Shostakovich recordings out there now. There are complete cycles, there are individual performances. And so I was whizzing through stuff here in the overflow room in the S section, which is over there behind my left shoulder. And I had no problem whatsoever putting together an absolutely first-class Shostakovich cycle with no weak links whatsoever. I promise you that. They are all great performances, but some of the more obvious choices are not included. And that was exciting for me because it gave me an opportunity to go back and replay some of these performances that I liked very much and rated very highly. A lot of them I reviewed originally at ClassicsToday.com. I haven't heard them in a while. So it really was fun. It was fun for me, and I think it's going to be fun for you too. And the interesting thing about this is that, you know, there are 15 Shostakovich symphonies. I mean, we did Sibelius, right? And Sibelius was easy. There's only 7 of them. But this is going to take some work and some thought. And I've made the rules a little easier this time in one particular way. I have, again, decided not to duplicate any conductors. Orchestras, you don't have a choice. You may have to. But conductors, no. With the exception of Symphonies number 2 and 3, because nobody cares about Symphonies numbers 2 and 3, and they almost invariably come coupled on a disc, or there is filler to some other symphony, and you might as well just put them together. And anyone who does one is going to do the other just as well. I know of no versions of 2 where 3 sucks, or a fabulous 3 where 2 sucks. I mean, they're just together. They come packaged. They're these Siamese twins of Shostakovich symphonies, and nobody much likes them or cares about them anyway. Let's not kid ourselves. So I'm not going to worry about it, and neither should you. But aside from that, it's one conductor per symphony. And I think that'll be very interesting, particularly because some of the symphonies, of course, are very popular and have had millions and millions of recordings, whereas others, not so much. And so the choice is much more limited. But that doesn't mean there aren't wonderful, wonderful options out there. So let's get right to it. Symphony number 1. I mean, this is one of the ones that 1 billion people have recorded. And my choice is Ormandy with the Philadelphia Orchestra. I love this performance. You know, Ormandy got most attention because he did number 5 and his number 4, which is also fabulous. And then the 3 late symphonies on RCA, of which 15 is particularly fine. It really is. But his first is a really, really fine performance of the first. It has all of the wonderful tonal qualities of Philadelphia. It's snappy, it's precise, it has the necessary verve, but what it really has, and I think what makes it really special, is just the most heart-rendingly beautiful account of the slow movement. I mean, the first symphony's quick parts, you know, movements 1, 2, and 4, really kind of take care of themselves in most performances. I mean, they just have to have that sort of really rhythmic, sick, dry quality about them. Philadelphia was not known for its dry qualities, but they play wonderfully, wonderfully well here. This dates from the same time as that fabulous Shostakovich first cello concerto that they did with Rostropovich, when Shostakovich was there with them. And it's a great performance of the first that nobody really ever talks about. So that goes into the we've done it pile. That's not the coaster pile. It's just there's a bed over there, so I can toss things onto it, and they land softly, and it looks terrific when I do that, doesn't it? All right, numbers 2 and 3. What are we going to do about numbers 2 and 3? It's a problem, isn't it, folks? I guess this is kind of the consolation prize for the conductor that gets 2 and 3. They get to do 2 symphonies, but they're the 2 that nobody particularly likes or cares about. I actually think they're kind of fun. 3 in particular is sort of a demented socialist realist takeoff on the finale of Beethoven's Ninth. So if you know Beethoven's Ninth, you may recognize some things about 2 and 3 in a very sort of loose way. But, they were both composed during the 15 seconds when socialist realist aesthetics and avant-garde music were living in harmony. Well, that marriage ended in a very acrimonious divorce, but we have symphonies numbers 2 and 3. As a result, they both have choruses. One of them has a factory whistle in F sharp, I think. No one's ever found a factory whistle in F sharp, so you have to fake it with some brass. They're not bad works. They're kind of interesting and experimental, actually, but they're going to be nobody's favorites. And so the consolation prize goes to Maris Janssens. Yes, Maris Janssens. And I'll tell you why. Because Janssens was known not for being the most emotionally intensive conductors, but for being one of those guys who had good rhythm, good musicianship, just a sense of balance and proportion that served him very well in a lot of this music. I mean, he did all the symphonies, and some of them are really quite good. And I think for 2 and 3, he's just the guy. And he's got Bavarian radio forces, which sound wonderful, and they're beautifully recorded. And the result is a really terrific 2 and 3. I mean, they really are. But then again, there aren't any bad 2s and 3s because the only people who do them are people who are doing complete cycles, basically, right? Nobody gets up and says to their record label, hey, guys, I have a great idea. Let's do Shostakovich 2 and 3, and then I'll finish my Mozart symphony cycle. It doesn't work that way, does it? So they're all going to be pretty good. And the music itself is kind of indestructible too. I mean, what are you going to do to it to wreck it? I mean, how would you know? It's so weird anyway. So Maris Janssens is your guy on Warner, and he goes onto the bed. Now we come to all the important ones. 4. Now, 4 is a big deal because, the classic version of number 4 is Kirill Kondrashin's, which is wonderful. But my Kondrashin cycle is back in Brooklyn. And so I'm not cheating. I'm not going to use it. I mean, I could have mentioned it and said, yes, that's the one. I've got a bunch of them that I've left in Brooklyn that I am not going to mention because of that. I'm leaving them to you. So it's not Kondrashin. But you know what? Even Kondrashin's isn't my favorite one. My favorite 4th, and this really is my favorite 4th, and it's one that, again, I don't know, anybody never, people never really talk about it. Previn and Chicago. Now, this is super duper hot. Previn, in Chicago did 2 Shostakovich symphonies. He remade the 5th, which he had originally done for RCA with the LSO, and that one is better than this one, I think. But the 4th, holy smokes, it has all of Kondrashin's vicious, mechanical, terrifying, kind of overpowering juggernaut quality because you've got the Chicago Symphony brass section, and it's really, really well recorded, and it's just about unbeatable. It really is a fabulous, fabulous Shostakovich 4th. I wish other people would pay attention to it. When, of course, Previn is now dead, so RCA issued a big box, which means EMI should issue a big box. Let's hope they don't do something stupid like just limit it to his LSO recordings, and they include Pittsburgh and Chicago, where he made some of his absolutely greatest records, this Shostakovich 4th among them, and away it goes. Now we're up to Shostakovich 5. Who doesn't do Shostakovich 5 well? There are basically 2 ways to do Shostakovich 5. You can treat the finale as an unalloyed triumphant procession, which works perfectly well. I want to say this, but since we learned that there's a subtext that, it's supposed to represent not a happy ending at all, but people being tortured into celebrating that it's a hollow victory, that the bombast is intentional. We didn't really know that there was bombast until we found out it was intentional, right? We naive souls in the West took a triumphant major key procession to be a triumphant major key procession. Silly us. How could we know that everything that Shostakovich wrote has a sneaky anti-totalitarian subtext to it? I mean, I am way, as you can tell from my sarcasm, not necessarily buying into that business. He was just as capable of writing a happy ending as anybody, and the happiness could be genuine. Even though he was neurotic and tormented, he had his moments. I'm sure he had some happy moments, the birth of his children. He had an open marriage. He could screw whoever he wanted. I mean, he must have had a pretty good time. I'm sure he did. I mean, he was married, how many, 3 times, 4 times? I don't know. He had things to cheer him up. Let's put it that way, even though his music is often extremely pensive, shall we say. So now we have the Fifth. We were just happily assuming that the end was happy. And there were many, many wonderful versions. There was Ormandy, there was Bernstein, there was Previn, there was, that had happy endings. And there still are. And it's still fine to do it that way. But then we realized, you see, the melodious stuff wasn't available. Mravinsky, his recordings were not easy to find, and they were live and sounded like hell. And, all of the other ones that had come out here, because the Fifth was his most popular symphony, everybody was playing it. So there was a tradition, but we didn't really know what the Soviet tradition was until Maxim Shostakovich, and this got released as part of the licensing deal with RCA. It was released on BMG, and it may originally even have been on EMI, or I don't know, but it came out, and it had that real slow finale, not the coda to the finale, where we learned that the jabbing violins doing repeated A's endlessly with the piano poking behind them, like that's unhappiness. And now we know it's unhappiness. And it actually does add a certain color if you play it that way. And then there sort of became a competition as to who could be more agonizing in the coda of the finale of Shostakovich's Fifth. And there are many marvelous versions that do it that way. Rostropovich was fabulous. Kurt Sanderling, whoa, maybe that's the most painful of all on Berlin Classics. But Maxim Shostakovich, who recorded this again, by the way, for Superphone. He did a whole Shostakovich cycle for Superphone, which was not very good. It really wasn't, so we ain't talking about it, and you shouldn't either. I don't want to see it on any of your lists if you send them in. But this Shostakovich Fifth with the Moscow Symphony, right? Yeah, no, the USSR Symphony Orchestra. I mean, no one knows what any of these things were. They changed their name every 5 minutes. But it's a great Shostakovich Fifth, obviously. He certainly had a claim to authenticity, and it's one of the ones that sort of, for us Westerners, added a really wonderful extra dimension to our understanding of the work, and I love it. It's great, and it sounds really good too. So over that goes. Now, number 6. Number 6 was sort of the stepchild of the great Shostakovich symphonies because it has a really weird form, right? A slow movement followed by 2 quick movements. And there are a couple of ways you can handle those 2 quick movements. You can do them really, really, really fast, both. You can do what Bernstein does and take the second one at a very moderate pace and then the finale quickly, so you have a progressive acceleration. It's just a wonderful, wonderful work, deeply emotional in the first movement and full of color and high spirits in the last 2. I love it. I just love it. I've played it. Our orchestra did it back in my community orchestra days, and we had a really, really, really good time with it. It sounds wonderful. It's fun to do if you don't want to do the Fifth 500 times. So, and we did the Fifth too. Oh, if I got a Shostakovich Fifth story for you, but we'll do a separate talk on the Fifth and some of these other symphonies, and I'll save it for then. But there are numerous superb recordings of the Sixth. It's a relatively easy work to interpret. It doesn't present many tricks. The obvious first choice, in my opinion anyway, would have been Berglund, but he's coming later because his 6th was coupled with the 11th, and I'm giving it away now, but you'll see. I just love this one too. Stokowski. This is also with the Chicago Symphony. I mean, people don't remember this, but this is a vivid, fabulous, stereo, exciting, thrill-packed version of the Shostakovich Sixth with good old Leopold. I mean, just the stuff he did was amazing. It's coupled with possibly the most horrible piece of music ever written in the Soviet Union, Khachaturian's Third Symphony. And I know there's one of you guys in the comments who says that they like it. Change your mind, please. I don't want to know. You've said it once. I don't need to hear it again. It's awful, awful. Oh, God, it's awful. But the Shostakovich Sixth with Stokowski is fabulous. So there we go. And we should have Stokowski was a loyal Shostakovich guy. And so it's good to have him do some of his Shostakovich. Now we come to the Leningrad. Oh, the Leningrad. This is really going to be fun because I know you're all going to assume that I'm going to pick Bernstein with the Chicago Symphony again on Deutsche Grammophon, but I'm not. And there are two reasons for it. One is it's over in Brooklyn. The other is that I was at the concert where he did it, and it was like one of the great experiences of my life. But we've already had the Chicago Symphony twice, and I'm not throwing them in there again. I really think, when I want to hear the Leningrad Symphony, the one I turn to most often, even more than Bernstein, great though it is Nimi Järvi on Chandos with the Scottish National Orchestra. Was it Royal then? No, it was just the Scottish National Orchestra then. It hadn't been knighted. Anyway, the reason I love this performance, there are two reasons. First of all, it's fast. It's really fast. I think you should play the Leningrad Symphony really fast. Bernstein doesn't, of course, but he gets away with it because he's a genius. But most people don't play it fast enough. And the result has dead spots, shall we say, and more than a few. But this performance, whoa, it's a smoker. It's exciting. Just pedal to the metal, ear-splittingly loud, fabulously well recorded, with an orchestra that has a terrific brass section, and you need two of them in this symphony. And it's absolutely fantastic. He gets through the whole thing in 69 minutes. That's like 10 minutes faster than Bernstein does. And he doesn't make any cuts, and it's just fabulous. So if you want to hear a Leningrad that may sell you on the Leningrad, if you've been sort of hesitating because of its reputation, try Nimi Järvi. Trust me, you will not regret it. It is fun. It is just fun. So there you go. Now, number 8. Also, many options for number 8. Chief among them, probably Mravinsky, but again, we're going to see him a little bit later, so I'm not picking him for the 8th. Wonderful, though, his stereo. Remember, it was on Philips, and it's sort of melodia, and it was pitched half a tone too high on some label, and so it was all in C# minor, which is fine with me. I have nothing against C# minor, but my choice at the moment is, and I love lots of them, is Petrenko. Petrenko on Naxos. This is a great 8th, and again, the reason it's a great 8th is because I'm going to gently put it over there because it's a whole box. Oh, God. That was not good. Whoa! I'll find it later. The reason I like this performance so much is because the 8th is yet again another one of those symphonies that can die when people just drag on the first movement endlessly. And Petrenko doesn't. Petrenko understands how to make the music flow, how to give it shape, how to keep, the passacaglia too, which is a point of stasis no matter what tempo you take it at. That's the 4th out of 5 movements. You need to be able to keep the music moving. And that's what Petrenko does. It's a great 8th. And particularly the finale does not let down the show because it's going to end quietly. And, after all the Sturm und Drang that's happened before, it's very easy to let that finale sound anticlimactic. But here it doesn't. It's a wonderful conception and execution of the piece. Now, number 9. Nobody does 9 badly. Has there ever been a performance of number 9 that's terrible? There have been some humorless ones, but it's very hard to find a bad one. But I want to find a special one, and I have it. I have it here, particularly. It is amazing, and this is going to shock you. It's Zdeněk Kozler with the Czech Philharmonic. Koshler, of course, was a very, very fine conductor. The Czech Philharmonic is the Czech Philharmonic, perfect for this symphony with all of its spiky woodwind coloring and voices. And especially, he handles the finale. The finale has sort of a climax to the finale where he lets the trumpets really, really come out. And again, it's sort of like the Zell Moldau. You realize, holy crap, there's like something for them to do that's really kind of fun if you can hear it. You know, when you hear it, and you usually don't, it's just a fabulous performance. Nice, dry, spiky, funny, sharp, sardonic. It's got everything the piece has in it. And it's played to a fairly well, if you can find this. It was originally issued on Praga. And I still see it on Amazon around. It's out there somewhere. This is coupled with yet another Mravinsky Shostakovich fifth, which I couldn't care less about, frankly. But the ninth with Koshler, this is hot stuff. It gives the piece a stature you never thought it could have. And you will listen to it with fresh ears. I guarantee it. So, with that said, we now come to number 10, and we're staying in the same place. And Churl has to be. I mean, there are great tenths out there. Karajan did a great 10th. I was tempted to mention it, but no. This is so great. Not only do I have it here, but I have it in Brooklyn. I keep it in every room in the house. I have 2 in the bathroom. That's how great this 10th is. It is amazing. And it was reissued on DG Originals, too. It was coupled with the Stravinsky Violin Concerto, I believe. It is amazing. I mean, when you think that this recording was made within a couple of years of the premiere, and it is absolutely the hottest, most exciting performance of the symphony that has ever been recorded. The second movement is so vicious, the Stalin movement, evil run amok. It is so exciting. It's breathtaking. The whole symphony is breathtaking in this performance. It's in mono, but great mono. I mean, it doesn't make any difference. It just sounds amazing. And that is the performance to start with Ancherl. And frankly, after Ancherl, everybody else sounds just a touch tame. They really need to come up with a different conception to challenge Ancherl. It has to be on a different level entirely, because this one is just so convincing. And I kind of get the sense, especially when doing this work, that they took a look at it, Ancherl and the Czechs, and they must have said something like, let's show those assholes and those assholes to the East what we can do with their music. Because as you know, they were never happy being vassals of the Czech Republic. And the Czech Philharmonic particularly had a tremendous amount of pride. There's a fabulous article about, the orchestra that defeated communism, about how the Czech Philharmonic behaved when they had to go to the Soviet Union, and how the Soviets behaved when they came to these other countries that were nominally part of the Soviet Union or client states of the Soviet Union, and how obnoxious the Russians were. And this is payback. That's what this performance is, folks. It is musical payback in the best possible way. It's great. There is no Russian performance that comes within 100 miles of it. Gotta love it. Okay, here we are, number 11. As I promised you, Berglund. And here he is in his box. You may be able to still find it separately. The 11th. The 11th is, Shostakovich's most eloquent socialist realist tract. And in fact, it was so realist that the socialists didn't like it because it's a very dark and tragic piece. And it sounds basically like a film score in search of a movie. Berglund rendered the piece with all of the gravity and tragic intensity that led us to believe momentarily, at least while it's being performed by Berglund, that there's a lot more substance there. I mean, nobody can do anything about the endlessly repetitious first movement, or, the fact that the second movement, Massacre, takes a little while to get slaughtering, but wow, it's a great performance. It's with Bournemouth. It was stunningly recorded by EMI. There have been some first-class performances of the 11th since then. There really have. And I can also think of, maybe 4 or 5 of them. But Berglund is still your guy, and off he goes. There, I'm being very careful now because the other one should have bounced trapeze-like across the room. 12. Does anybody like 12? Speaking of socialist realist, this is socialist realist that the socialist realist liked, which is not a good thing. Not a good thing. Actually, the truth of the matter is this symphony has the first two movements are really pretty good. They're very effective and very, very exciting. And, one of the guys who did just a sensational job with it is Haitink, but I'm not mentioning Haitink because he's coming up shortly. I have Mravinsky. You got to include a Mravinsky, right, for a Shostakovich cycle somewhere. And I didn't put him in 5, and I didn't put him in 8. I saved him for number 12. I think the reason I saved him for the trashiest of all the Shostakovich symphonies is because he rejected number 13, because he was either a government toady or he was anti-Semitic or he was both. I don't care why. He gets 12. Ha! He has to do the junk symphony, the one that even Shostakovich almost committed suicide over because he thought it was so lousy. I actually, like I said, the finale is hopeless. Hopeless. And it's hopeless. And Shostakovich knew it was hopeless because he called it the dawn of humanity. I mean, does anyone believe that? Does anyone even for a second think that Shostakovich was serious about writing music that represented that, or that the music really does represent that? It's just a joke. And it pleased the authorities, but the first two movements are really, really good. I mean, really good. And the fusillade third movement, which has the fear music that he would reuse in Babi Yar. And the second part, the last three movements are all joined together in fears. He uses some of the same motives in Babi Yar. So there's real Shostakovich throughout this work, at least until you get to the finale. And the only way to pull off the finale is to just make an ear-splitting din and mean every single note. And Mravinsky did. And he does. This, by the way, is on Urania. I doubt this still exists on Urania, but the performance shouldn't be too hard to find elsewhere. It's pretty readily available. Now we come to Babi Yar, which I think is just a shattering masterpiece and a glorious piece of music. And it has also been recorded very well numerous times. I was really torn about which version to use. I was thinking really hard about Barshai because his opening movement is the most chilling, scarifying of all of the possible performances. I remember the first time I played it, I had my good friend Christophe Huss from Montreal. He's the music critic for Le Devoir, and he was running Repertoire magazine in France. And I put it on. I said, listen to this. And he just looked at me and said, it is death. And it is. Oh, it's great. It's not the one I'm picking. The one I've chosen is Court Mazur with the New York Phil. This one was a surprise. I was also at these performances, but that wasn't why it was great. I mean, they have Yevtushenko on hand to actually read from some of the poetry. He made a career, thanks to Shostakovich, running around getting speakers' fees, reading his poems, even after he changed them under government pressure. He was nothing if not opportunistic, as Galina Vishnevskaya pointed out to him in a fabulous rant and dressing down that she gave him in her kitchen in Paris. But I think it's just, Mazur did really good Russian music generally. I mean, he did a good Prokofiev Fifth as part of this same series of recordings. He was pretty good in Tchaikovsky. And this Babi Yar has the intensity because not only is, Mazur being German good at music that expresses death and misery, but the orchestra is the New York Phil, which is a wonderful, wonderful band for Shostakovich. I mean, you have the weight of sonority, the intensity of the brass section. So if Mazur was thinking of cooling things down a little bit, there was the orchestra there to keep the cauldron boiling. So Mazur's Babi Yar is first rate. And you do get Yevtushenko, sitting around going, nach Babi Yar, komm jetzt, pom jetzt, nicht yet, thing, whatever it is. I used to know the whole thing, but there we go. Now we come to 14. 14. 11 poems about death. What could be more fun than that? I made the great mistake of giving one of my dear friends tickets to that because he was having marital issues. And I thought I had tickets, and I felt guilty. And it was a concert, and I wasn't looking too hard at the program. And I said, take your wife, have a nice evening out, you know. Well, it was Shostakovich 14. Oops! Oh! They got divorced acrimoniously. Are you surprised? But, you know, and the other Shostakovich 14th story I have to tell you, which was just unbelievable. There was a performance I saw conducted by, of all people, Krzysztof Penderecki. Now, Penderecki was also very interested in music about death and misery, and the program was his own Die Natura Sonoris number 2, which features somebody attacking a filing cabinet with a hacksaw. I mean, it's very as far as avant-garde pieces go. And then they did his viola concerto, which is as gray and dismal a piece of music as anybody ever wrote. And then, as the grand finale on the second half of the program, Shostakovich 14. Well, this particular evening, there was a huge snowstorm in New York. This was at Avery Fisher Hall, when it was Avery Fisher Hall back in those days. And people were fleeing. First of all, they were fleeing all during the first half anyway, because it was all Penderecki. And then by the time, you know, the snow was coming down and they started Shostakovich 11th, and whoever was left gave up the ghost. And by the time that performance was over, there were like 6 people left, one of whom was me and one of whom was my friend. And it was hilarious, absolutely hilarious. But, you know, it's a great piece of music. I mean, gut-wrenching, gripping piece of music. I do not like the international version that reverts to the poems in their original language in the first place, because I think Russian is a beautiful, magnificent language that Shostakovich sets so well. He has such a feeling for the sound of the language, you know, and it's just marvelous, absolutely marvelous. You know, when death walks into the tavern, you don't want to say, you know, La morte, idiot. I mean, no, that's Russian. You know, it makes no sense. It's smert vishla, yushla, istavierne. I mean, it's wonderful because, you know, Russian has all these crazy verbs of motion. And so you have to do it that way. It doesn't work in any other language. The syllables don't come out right. So it's absolutely great only in Russian. And the best version is Vishnevskaya, Rostropovich, was this Mark Reshetin? Yeah, Mark Reshetin. Oh, this is the smoky, hot one. You know, this is the one where, you know, Shostakovich got up and said to the you know, assembled masses, I think this piece is optimistic, because he said that about everything to get it past him, because he was saying, well, you should be happy that there's nothing but death, because death is the only reality there is. And that's an optimistic socialist realist way of looking at the world. Yeah. This is just a gut-wrencher of a performance in fabulous sound. It's with the Academic Symphony Orchestra, Moscow, whatever that is. It's just strings and percussion. There are also great versions. You know, Barshai conducted, you know, a version contemporaneous with this that's just as good. And Shostakovich supposedly preferred the other soprano a little bit, but oh, I love Vishnevskaya. I love her in that. And, you know, I had a wonderful lunch with her in France. We gave her a Lifetime Achievement Award with the Cannes Classical Awards. And she basically sat there at lunch and sang the thing to me, you know, and everyone else, but I was sitting next to her, was to me. So I'm sitting there eating my appetizer, and she's going, tree-lee-lee, tree-lee-lee, lee-lee, tree. You know, 3 lilies grow on my grave. You know, it was wonderful. And Rostropovich was sitting across from her, and he's telling dirty jokes, and she's singing the Shostakovich 14th. It was a moment I'll never forget. And you can sort of relive it with that recording. That's just unbelievable. Now we come to 15. 15. Oh, what to do with 15? There are some great ones too, and I have several here. There's Ormandy's, which is first class, but there are many others. And one of my favorites, again, is Kurt Sanderling, but he did it twice. He did it in Cleveland, where it's just too slow, and then he did it for Berlin Classics in Germany, where it's first class, first rate, but that one's in Brooklyn. And so I decided to go with Haitink. Haitink, one of the best things he did in his Shostakovich cycle is the 15th. Again, it's a slow, grave performance full of substance and angst and emotion, especially in the conclusion, the finale, the Passacaglia, and the percussion, sort of coda is very, very measured. It's very, very, very deliberate and scary and spooky. It's beautiful. Absolutely beautiful. It's with the London Philharmonic. He didn't do it with the Concertgebouw. This is half and half. And the Concertgebouw recordings generally are quite a bit better, but the 15th is one of Haitink's truly proud achievements as a Shostakovich conductor, and I recommend it wonderfully as a result. And that, my dear friends, is my ideal Shostakovich cycle. 15 symphonies, no weak links among them. And there is no existing cycle by any one performer to date that can match it. That I guarantee. So keep on listening, folks. I really look forward to seeing what your choices are. And no cheating. Remember, different conductors for every symphony except for 2 and 3. See if you can do it, see what happens, and have a great, great time with it, because I'm really enjoying these talks, and I hope you are too. I really do. I mean, it gets us to thinking, me, you, all of us, to thinking about the music, to making choices, which is what this is all about, how to make the best choices. So keep on listening and take care. Bye-bye.